The official reports say one thing, but the timeline says another. Eyewitnesses whisper a different story. The CCTV speaks a language of its own. And when you piece it all together, the truth is no longer a mystery. But evidence doesn't lie.
The respondent.
It is the people who lie.
And tonight, we take you step by step to unmask the lie behind the death of Albert Omondi Ojwang. But if you missed our previous report, here's what we still believe. Albert Ojwang did not remain at Nairobi Central Police Station until his death, nor did his torture begin there. No. It began much earlier. He was taken out for an off-the-record interrogation deep inside Karura forest, supervised by a senior officer and his driver, in a brutal attempt to break him. And Constable James Mokhwana. He's already told us two different stories. In one version, he admits helping cover up what happened. In the other, he tries to come clean, but leaves out exactly the parts the public most needs to hear. Now, let me tell you this. Mokhwana did speak some truth, but during that second statement, he was literally hiding in the bush. So let's rewind, and I'll show you how his story is only the tip of a much deeper iceberg, and why what he's not saying is what matters most. Because one fact remains clear. Albert Ojwang is dead, because Deputy Inspector General Elid Langat sent the DCI to arrest him, and a man with that much power should never have pursued personal justice. Because of that decision, a young father, a teacher, a man who assigned homework to his students that morning, died before he could ever mark their work. Now here is where the truth begins to unravel, and where James Mokhwana starts hiding it. He wants you to believe it all began inside the Nairobi Central Police Station. But that's not true. The torture began deep inside Karura forest. Let me show you what really happened. When Albert Omondi Ojwang arrived at Central Police Station, the vehicle that brought him from Homa Bay was dismissed. At that moment, James Mokhwana had already handed over his shift to the night officers. He was supposed to go home, but he didn't. He stayed behind in civilian clothes, something he conveniently leaves out of his version. Listen carefully to this. According to OCS Samson Talam, and I quote, "On June 8th, a few minutes after midnight, I received a call from Officer Sige, reporting that a man with injuries had been brought to the station. He asked, 'What do we do? Should we book him?' Talam told him, 'Talk to my deputy. He's in charge.' But here's the thing. Albert had already been booked earlier. At 9:35 p.m., OB number 136/7/6/2025. So why were they trying to book him again at midnight? Simple. Because this was after Karura Forest, and the injuries were different. That second OB entry, 9/08/06/2025, was for this second booking, after the torture. After this booking, it was again Mokhwana who personally took Albert to the cell. And here's what the insiders say. When Albert came back from Karura, he was badly injured. Blood covered his face. But, and this is key, the injuries were serious, but not fatal. So what did Mokhwana do next? He cleared the petty offenders from the cell, threw Albert in alone. But here's the crucial part. Mokhwana stayed behind for nearly 1 hour after returning from Karura, from 12:03 a.m. to 12:55 a.m. Sources believe that's when Mokhwana, with help from the 4 petty offenders, all finished what they started. One brutal moment. They smashed Albert's head against the wall. One sudden, fatal blow. No time to scream, no chance to call for help. And that ended Albert Omondi Ojwang's life. At around 1:13 a.m., after Mokhwana had left, an officer on a routine cell check found Albert's body. Blood on the wall, injuries far worse than when he'd come back from Karura. Already dead, no breathing. Now, here's Mokhwana's version. He claims they heard noise from the cell, rushed in, and found the petty offenders beating Albert, that they stopped them. But let's now look at the post-mortem report, and you'll see why Mokhwana is still lying. Albert's body showed blunt force trauma to the head, linear skull fractures, subdural hematomas, severe internal bleeding caused by repeated powerful blows, bruises on both sides of the jaw, trauma to the lungs, and most telling, neck compression marks consistent with strangulation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not the result of a simple punch, a fall, or some random cell fight. This is torture, and torture takes time. Such brutal injuries cannot take place casually in a police cell, right under the noses of officers. No screams, no cries for help, no commotion. You mean to tell me that these 4 random petty offenders, clueless amateurs, somehow pulled off a professional torture? No. The truth is, Albert's first tortured in Karura forest for hours, trying to force information out of him. He fell into a coma. They brought him back to the station until he barely conscious, and when he regained a bit of awareness, they finished him with one fatal blow to the head. Because this was not random violence, this was professional torture aimed at extracting information. But now, you're being asked to believe that 4 petty offenders just randomly took it upon themselves to commit torture and murder. That is the biggest lie. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the tampering of the CCTV footage. Because this might just be the clearest proof that Albert Ojwang was taken out of Central Police Station that night. Now, if you've ever been to Nairobi Central Police Station, you'll know this. The CCTV camera positioned near the OCS's office does not capture what happens inside the cells. It doesn't even see into the nearby cell block. So think about it. If the official story is that Albert was tortured inside the cell, out of view, supposedly by other inmates, then why tamper with the footage from outside? Here's what they did. The camera in question captures everything, from the reception area, through the corridors, all the way to the main entrance and exit. And yet, they precisely deleted the footage, from 9:40 p.m. to 1:14 a.m. The only surviving clip. It simply shows Albert being carried out of the cell and rushed to the hospital, long after the critical window had already passed. Now ask yourself, why delete that specific window of time? Why erase those exact hours? Because that's when Albert was secretly taken out of the station, driven to Karura forest, brutally tortured, and later brought back. That's the part they desperately wanted to cover up. Make no mistake, James Mokhwana and OCS Samson Talam know exactly what happened that night. And while Mokhwana is now dripping out partial truths, trying to sound like he's confessing, one thing is clear, he's still running. Running from the full story he does not want the public to hear. So my dear viewers, let me ask you this. Do you honestly believe that Albert Omondi Ojwang was tortured only by so-called inmates inside the cell? If you ask me, I don't buy it. Not for a second. But what about you? What do you think really happened? Tell me in the comments below. I'd love to hear your views. That's all I had for you today. Until next time, stay safe, and may God be with you. Goodbye for now.